Hi, I'm Jenna. I had just turned 32 when I decided to buy my first house. A quaint little place with a cozy backyard, perfect for my 2 dogs. Buying this house wasn't just a financial step. It was my declaration of independence, my way of claiming control over my own life. The day of the housewarming came with a mix of excitement and nerves. I planned everything meticulously, wanting it to be a blend of fun and formality, a true milestone. My parents were the only family I invited, given the complicated dynamics of extending further. As guests arrived, the afternoon buzzed with laughter and conversation. I was in the middle of showing my college friend Lisa some renovation plans when the doorbell rang again. Expecting a neighbor or a late-arriving friend, I opened the door with a smile, only to find my mom standing there with Carson and his daughter, Vanessa. Carson grinned, though it didn't reach his eyes, while Vanessa looked around my living room like she had just walked into a thrift store. "Jenna, darling, hope you don't mind us bringing a little extra company," my mom chirped, breezing past me without waiting for a response. For a moment, I was too stunned to speak. "Mom, I thought it was just going to be us," I finally said, my voice a mix of confusion and irritation. "Oh honey, I knew you wouldn't mind. Carson really wanted to see your place, and Vanessa's been excited to meet you," she gushed, as if she hadn't ignored my carefully curated guest list. As the party went on, I tried to push down the frustration, thinking maybe it could still be a good day. But I was wrong. I would have chosen a different color here. "This shade is so 2010, Vanessa said loudly, eyeing my living room with disdain. My friends, caught in the moment, exchanged awkward glances as the room fell silent. My cheeks burned with a mix of embarrassment and anger. This was supposed to be my celebration, my moment. I couldn't let her ruin it. I turned to Vanessa, forcing a tight smile. "Well, not all of us need to follow the latest trends to feel good about our homes. Some of us prefer something more timeless," I replied, sharper than I intended. But it didn't end there. "Why would anyone arrange their living room like this? It's almost like she's never heard of interior design," Vanessa quipped. That was it. I couldn't hold back any longer. My friends, clearly uncomfortable, watched as I marched over to Vanessa. The room grew tense. "You know, Vanessa, if you have suggestions, I'm all ears. But maybe you could share them without insulting my choices in front of my guests," I said, my voice calm but firm. Vanessa blinked, surprised, then scoffed. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. No need to be so sensitive." Judging by the supportive looks from my friends, they weren't thinking anything of the sort. Despite the awkward tension, I could feel them backing me up. Just as I thought things would cool down, my mom pulled me aside, her face tense with anxiety. "Jenna, could we talk in private?" she asked softly. In the hallway, away from the party, she dropped the bombshell. "Honey, I know it's a lot to ask, but could Vanessa stay with you for a while? Just until they sort out their living situation." Her request hit me like a punch. "Mom, I can't. This is my space, and after tonight, it's clear Vanessa and I aren't exactly compatible." Her face fell. "Jenna, she's struggling. You know how tough Carson can be on her. It would only be for a little while." I could feel the weight of her expectations pressing down on me, like so many times before when she tried to fix things by putting me in uncomfortable situations. But this was too much. "Mom, no, I need to set boundaries. I can't have her stay here, not after how she's behaved. I'm sorry, but that's my final answer." The hurt in her eyes stung, but I knew I had to stand my ground. As she walked away, her shoulders slumped, and I felt a strange mix of triumph and dread. I had finally stood up for myself, but I knew this wasn't the end of it. As the party wound down and the last guests left, the house felt quieter, almost eerie. The echoes of laughter were replaced by a stillness that settled heavily in the air. I started cleaning up, the simple task grounding me. Each dish I washed, every crumb I swept, felt like I was trying to clear away not just the physical mess. Debris wasn't the only thing I was trying to clear away. The emotional turmoil that had spilled over throughout the night clung to me. Lying in bed later, with the house dark and still around me, I replayed the evening in my mind. My spine tingled with the apprehension of what was to come. Vanessa's smug smirk, Carson's disapproving glare, my mother's disappointment, they all haunted the edges of my thoughts. As sleep finally claimed me, I clung to the hope that maybe the fallout wouldn't be as bad as I feared. But deep down, I knew better. This was just the beginning, and the repercussions of my refusal would ripple further than I could imagine. The next morning started out ordinarily enough: coffee, a quick scroll through emails, and a mental to-do list for the day. But that normalcy shattered with a ping from my phone, a security alert from my home system. Panic gripped my chest as I viewed the live feed. Someone was at my house. I rushed home, my mind racing with possibilities. Nothing prepared me for what I found. The locks had been changed. My key was useless against the new mechanism. Peering through the window, my blood boiled as I saw Vanessa lounging on my sofa, a smug smile plastered across her face. "What are you doing in my house?" I shouted through the door. The door swung open, and there stood Carson, grinning wide and unwelcoming. "Oh, Jenna, we thought we'd take you up on that offer to stay after all," he sneered, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. "There was no offer, Carson. Get out of my house now," I snapped, my voice sharp with a command I hoped would cut through his arrogance. Carson leaned lazily against the doorframe, his posture relaxed in stark contrast to the rising anger in my voice. Now, Jenna, let's not be hasty. You wouldn't want to upset your mother, would you? You know how she feels about the police." His words hit their mark. Carson knew exactly how to manipulate the situation. My mother had a deep-rooted fear of the police, stemming from a traumatic incident in her past, and Carson wielded that knowledge like a weapon. But I couldn't let that stop me. This was my home, my sanctuary. Taking a deep breath, I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling the police, Carson. You can't just break into someone's house and change the locks." His smirk faltered, uncertainty flickering across his face as I dialed. Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the street. The police arrived swiftly, their questions precise. Carson and Vanessa's attempts to spin the situation fell flat against the legal reality of their actions. "I have every right to secure my property," Carson argued, though his confidence waned under the officer's unimpressed gaze. "The locks were changed without permission, and she was not notified," an officer said, making notes in his book. The law was clear. Carson and Vanessa had no leg to stand on. The eviction was quick. Carson and Vanessa were escorted out, their protests muted by the firm instructions of the police. Watching them leave, I felt a mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that my home was mine again, sorrow for the inevitable fallout this would cause with my mother. As the police wrapped up their report, one officer lingered. "Are you going to be okay?" he asked, his tone kind. I nodded, though my heart was heavy. "Yes, thank you. I didn't have a choice." He offered a sympathetic smile before leaving. Once the door clicked shut behind him, I stood in the quiet aftermath. The house felt larger and emptier, the space that was almost taken from me suddenly overwhelming. I walked through each room, reaffirming my presence in the place that had been violated. The weight of the day pressed down on me, a reminder that the battles were far from over. Carson and Vanessa might be gone, but the repercussions would ripple through my family, possibly irreversibly. Yet despite the turmoil, a stubborn flame of defiance flickered within me. This was my home, and I would fight for it, no matter the cost. The silence of the evening was shattered by the sharp ring of my phone. My heart sank as I saw my mother's name flash on the screen. I braced myself for the inevitable conversation. "Mom," I answered, my voice barely above a whisper. "Jenna," she began, her tone thick with emotion. How could you? How could you do this to Carson and Vanessa after everything they've been through?" Her words cut deep. I struggled to keep my voice steady. "Mom, they broke into my house. They changed my locks. What was I supposed to do? Just let them take over my home?" "You could have handled it differently, Jenna. You know how I feel about the police," she replied, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disappointment. "Mom, I didn't have a choice. They left me no choice. This is my home, and I had to protect it," I said, frustration creeping into my tone. There was a long, heavy pause, the weight of her next words hanging between us. "I can't believe this. I thought you understood, Jenna. I thought you cared more about your family." "I do care, Mom," I whispered, "but shouldn't my safety and my rights matter too? Why is it always about what I can do for others, never about what's right for me?" The questions tumbled out, years of suppressed feelings fueling my words. "You just don't get it, do you?" Her voice cracked, laced with a mix of anger and sorrow. "I can't support this. I can't be part of it." My throat tightened. "What are you saying?" I asked, dreading the answer. I think it's better if we don't talk for a while. I need to think about all this. Her final words cut through the air before she ended the call, leaving behind a silence that felt like a void. The phone slipped from my grasp, clattering to the floor. My mother, my lifelong anchor, had cast me adrift over this. I sank into the couch, the soft fabric offering no comfort. Looking out the window, the night stretched on endlessly, and the once comforting contours of my home now felt alien, reshaped by the day's events. Thoughts swirled in my mind of family loyalty, manipulation, and the personal cost of standing up for myself. Was there another way I could have handled it? A path that wouldn't have led to this rift? As the night drew on, I wrestled with those questions. Manipulation wasn't just about coercion. It was about making someone feel guilty for holding their ground. Carson had used my mother's fears to control me, and now my mother was unintentionally doing the same with her disappointment. By dawn, a quiet resolve had settled over me. Protecting my emotional and psychological space was just as vital as defending my physical one. The rift with my mother was painful, but it was necessary for my growth. Standing in the stillness of the early morning, I knew that while the battle for my home was over, the journey to reclaim my life had just begun. As days turned into weeks, the sting of my mother's words faded into a persistent ache, a constant reminder of the price of my newfound autonomy. Her silence was deafening, but with each passing day, I found pieces of myself I hadn't realized I'd lost in the fray of family obligations. My home, once a battleground of invasion and conflict, began to transform back into the sanctuary I had envisioned. I repainted the living room, erasing the remnants of Vanessa's scornful remarks. With every stroke of the brush, I reclaimed my space. New locks, stronger and more secure, clicked reassuringly under my fingers, symbolizing the boundaries I was learning to set. In the solitude of my reclaimed home, I discovered a resilience I hadn't given myself credit for. Friends and neighbors, aware of the ordeal, rallied around me. Their support soothed the isolation my family's absence had left behind. Dinners, movie nights, and long walks with those who chose to stay by my side filled my days, reminding me that family isn't only about blood, it's about who stands with you when the ground falls away. The fate of Carson and Vanessa became a distant murmur, their paths diverging from mine in the wake of their eviction. Rumors of their struggles occasionally reached me through mutual acquaintances, but they no longer held sway over my emotions. My focus was on rebuilding, on fortifying the life I chose, rather than the one imposed upon me. One crisp morning, as I stood in my garden planting seeds that would one day bloom into vibrant flowers, I realized this was what true independence felt like. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of peace in its aftermath. The estrangement from my mother was a deep scar, one that might never fully heal, but it was also a testament to the lengths I would go to protect my peace. The journey to self-empowerment is often a solitary one, fraught with tough decisions and painful reckonings. But as I looked around the home I fought to protect, I knew it was worth it. Here, in my home space, I was free to live life on my terms, surrounded by those who respected and supported my boundaries. This wasn't just a house, it was my declaration of independence.